You're listening to the Live Life Longer show with Dan Voss, inspiring you to live longer through the cold, the hot, breathing, eating, and being nature. In this week's episode, my guest is Michael Collins, the founder of sugaraddiction.com and Quit Sugar Summit, as well as the past chairman of the board and current board member of Addiction Institute. Michael has been completely sugar-free for over 30 years and has worked closely with others to help them regain lives ravaged by this addictive product. Mike has been in recovery from substance use disorder for over 35 years and speaks on recovery topics separate from sugar. He raised 2 children sugar-free from the womb to over 6 years old when they only had sugar once a month for their entire childhood. His book, The Last Resort Sugar Detox Guide, which was rated #1 in healthy living on Amazon, is available to you today for free by visiting sugaraddiction.com. Michael, welcome to the Live Life Longer show.
Thanks for having me, Dan. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah, I appreciate you taking the time to join me and talk about a topic that I think, you and I were both talking about before we hit record here. It's a topic that I think is not talked about enough in the health space, in nutrition, and even, in the spotlight of addiction. People don't always look at sugar as something that can be addictive. So let's start maybe with that topic of how it's the one, substance that we are taking and consuming from early on in life, as children. Do you believe that sugar is a gateway drug to other drugs?
Absolutely. I believe it's the gateway drug. It's the original drug. If there's an original sin, this is the original drug. People basically get it in the womb, and they start to play with their nucleus accumbens in the womb. They start to play with their dopamine, serotonin, and this is a product that you can give to a 1-year-old with no legal, moral, or ethical worries, and people do, and they think it's cute the way that they're attracted to it, and they want more. They can't even speak, and they're giving them this stuff, and it just literally causes a lifetime of altered emotional management. What I mean by that, and this is kind of the crux of our work, is that as you were growing, your mother probably gave you a cookie when she was busy, when you were crying, and she didn't have time, and she had the other kids, and she had a job and all that. And so you learned that having a cookie, A, as a behavioral thing, but B, it truly is a physical thing. When you give someone that small, that much sugar, there's a euphoria. I mean, you've all seen it when the cake and ice cream comes out at a birthday party for 4 or 5-year-olds. It turns into a different room. The room changes because of what happens to the kids. I mean, heck, when's the last time you saw a movie where a woman got dumped by her boyfriend? They didn't have an ice cream party. I mean, this is a true comfort food, quote unquote. Everybody laughs about it. Everybody jokes about it. But I got my start in late stage food addiction assistance, helping people 1 and 200 pounds overweight, losing limbs, going blind, and they still couldn't quit sugar. The doctor said, "You're going to be dead this year if you don't quit." And still they wrestled with even the idea of it and the possibility of it. So the idea that it's a true addiction, you just ask anybody who's lost 100 or 200 pounds, they didn't find out what I need to eat, how much exercise I need to do. What they did is they recovered from managing their emotions with this product. And that is the part that you're very kind to allow the setup for the rest of the discussion. And that's what it's about. It's truly a gateway drug. And then my story is pretty simple. I grew up this way, and I thought that I was a normal kid, but we had unfettered access to the sugar bowl. My mother was my favorite sugar junkie. Her story is kind of sad in that her mom, my grandma, died when she was only 8 years old, and they owned a country store across the way. And they they said, whenever she comes in, just give her the candy, give her what she wants. And she thought, and still thought through probably the day she died, that sugar was love. And, we bonded with cookies and stuff every Saturday and making cookies. And So yeah, I mean, it's an evolution that you just have to. It takes about a podcast worth to set the whole thing up, but I'll draw on these types of things through the discussion. But it's very real. It's a very real drug and a very real dangerous drug.
Yeah. Why do you think sugar gets a free pass when we look at, other types of drugs, whether it's alcohol or cocaine or heroin, any other type of drug you want to name, you can name it. We look at those in a little bit more of a serious matter when it comes to addiction. Why is it that sugar gets that pass and we can kind of laugh it off or make it fun or make it something that's enjoyable? Is it because it's so ingrained into our culture?
100%. You hit the answer right on the head. And what it is it's a evolutionary thing. We zigged when we should have zagged. We took the wrong turn years ago. And the simple fact is that, the English Empire was growing on the backs of slavery and sugar. And that empire went from the average person went from 5 pounds to 100 pounds in a couple of centuries. And now it's at 150 pounds. And just like seatbelts in cars, just like drinking and driving, just like smoking is a good analogy, where they used to have doctors advertising on television that, calm you down or whatever, just stupid stuff that we look at it today and we're like, what the hell? And, that's going to happen with sugar here in the next 50 years. They're going to say, you used to give sugar to kids, right? And what happened is last 5 years, the science has exploded. I mean, just like the brain science. Look, we all know what the glucose molecule, so your listeners, the table sugar molecule of sugar is half glucose and half fructose, right? And so the glucose molecule we know causes diabetes and heart disease and about a zillion other metabolic syndrome type diseases. But what is less known is the idea of the fructose or the fructose. People pronounce it different ways, but where in the last 5 years we started to study and understand that it's affecting our brain reward chemicals, our norepinephrine, our GABA, our the big one, dopamine, serotonin, even our adrenal and our endorphins. Those kind of drugs are all affected by sugar. And when you slide somebody into an MRI, put some sweet stuff on their tongue, and you see the exact same thing light up on the brain chemicals in the brain scan of the brain as alcohol and drugs, then you start to realize that the dose makes the poison, right? We do a little bit of a little bit of heroin, a little bit of cocaine, a little bit of alcohol, but we are pounding 21 teaspoons of sugar through our body every single day unknowingly. Wow. And that's average. I mean, a Coke's got 12 teaspoons. So look at like a person with a big habit, they're at 30, 40 teaspoons of sugar a day. They literally have never given their dopamine, serotonin, they've never given this thing that evolved for 10 million years and only has been affected in the last 300 years in this heavy way. They're giving it this pounding, and people don't realize it. They don't put two and two together because the science is newer as far as the brain science. I mean, I can go on, but the short version is like the CDC has done studies, all kind of peer-reviewed studies are out there, that when someone loses a lot of weight in the first year, they end up gaining it all back. Now they can white knuckle it, whatever, but what they didn't do is what our work is they didn't separate their emotions, their management of their emotions from the sugar. So when they're down 40 pounds and 4 months in, a divorce, financial, a death, something happens, and they reach for the sugar because the feelings start to be annoying. And this is how they manage their feelings. Their mom managed it back from the womb forward. And so now they're 40 years old, and they're like, they can't not, it's like muscle memory. They go back to it. And this is the golden key to the golden lock on how to get past this, is to understand and separate out. This is not your body wanting a sweet treat, a craving for something sweet. It is your body wanting a dopamine hit. And that's the part that is new and not well known. That's why I do so many podcasts, so that I can hopefully get this message out.
Yeah. So they get that dopamine hit from that sweet treat or dessert or any kind of sugar. And then after that, if they're not in the right mental state, then they're just going to go right back to whatever emotional catastrophe or trauma that they were experiencing, right? So for someone like yourself who has been sugar-free for the last 30 plus years, what would you tell to somebody that resorts to sugar as kind of a crutch, just to get that quick dopamine hit, and then they just realize, the next day that they're going to feel crummy again?
I mean, what would I tell them? I mean, what they have to do, the cure, if you will, the antidote, is like any pattern or habit change, is you have to substitute something new or different. So when you get the cravings, you got to go for a walk. Walking is the best exercise on the planet. And this proof now is that a lot of like slow, steady exercise is much better than like the, high intensity stuff. And it's better for your body too. But yoga, get a hug, watch the sunset, have a meal, call a friend. You've got to literally retrain your body to deal with everyday stressors. And this is a part that's hard and really much deeper, but very well known in the drug and alcohol world, is that the older trauma will start to come up. Like stuff that you never dealt with will start to come up. And you've got to journal it out. You've got to do the mental separation of food, the use of this food, and the management of your emotions, right? And I don't even want to call it food. It's drug food, this product, if you will. And so when you're able to consciously, not unconsciously, not doing it, because look, sugar is pretty much ubiquitous and close to free. You can get it anywhere. I mean, for less than $1, you're all set, You can get a little hit to last you to the next hit, and that's how it works. And that's what people use it for. And 85% of the food products on the shelf have sugar in it too. So it's not a conscious thing. It's not like you're saying, oh, I'm feeling terrible, I'm going to eat sugar. That's not how it works. It's just a learned thing. And so what we have to do is we have to separate those unconscious from conscious understanding and get you abstinence for 30, 60, or 90 days. And then you start to really, I mean, it's like the light bulb. It's so crazy. The light bulb goes on. Like at 30 or 60 or 90 days, people are like, I can't believe that I used to do that. I can't believe all of the physical and mental benefits now. My brain fog is cleared up. My skin is cleared up. I'm dropping to a regular sized body. They literally, and I've looked, I've stopped. I don't know how to say this, but I started being a little bit rougher with folks. I'm like, your brain is not capable of making a logical decision about this product until you get to the other side. You're just not capable. And people have echoed this when they get to 90 days. They're like, I can't believe I thought this way. I cannot believe that I continuously would get up every morning and say, today I'm going to quit. And then at 4:00, I'm back in the stuff. And this went on for decades. Wow. Decades. The folks, they just kept repeating the same process. And these are lawyers, doctors. I got Olympic athletes. I mean, people that can do anything with their body and their mind. They're successful in their life. But this thing would stop them cold in their tracks. And so I'm just, I'm trying to be nice about it. I'm trying to be informative about it. But I think I've got to get, like the Olympic athlete, she said, Mike, you got to be tougher on me. I'm like, excuse me? I'm the worst thing from tough love. He said, you got to get tougher on me. And so it worked. But
for a lot of the folks that you're working with, do you find that they oftentimes don't even realize that they have a sugar addiction, or are they pretty aware? Most of them aren't even aware.
They have no idea. And they don't want to talk about the word addiction. This has been part of my problem. The reason I have 30-day detox challenges, I got to literally sneak people in. I got to sneak them in the back door from this, what's now all the rage online is this sugar detox, 5-day, 10-day, 21-day sugar detox that everybody's doing. but they're doing it as a bolt-on to some diet or exercise program. They're like, just, oh, this is hot. Let me get some customers this way so that they can do their exercise program or their food program, right?
Yep.
Or buy their crap, buy their other stuff, their diet pills or what have you.
Yep.
And it's just not going to help. I mean, it's just going to keep you in the same swirl. I mean, Our average person has tried 6.8 different ways to lose weight or whatever. And every diet plan you've ever seen has at its core, at its base, get off the white stuff, right? Get off sugar, flour. I mean, they think they got a billion other things around it, but at its core, those are the basis of any diet. And so people try it, and they're just unconsciously doing what we're describing. They're going back to it because of their emotional management system is hijacked by sugar.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier fructose, which is the type of sugar that's found in a lot of fruit. Do you not eat any fruit then? When you say that you're not eating sugar, are you eliminating fruit out of your diet?
That's to open Pandora's box. It's the one that I get the most blowback on, the most pushback on. It's the fruit. And the answer to your question is yes or no or whatever. I don't eat fruit. I, like any adult, I treat it like an adult beverage. I treat it like have a couple of strawberries or a couple of blueberries at a buffet or whatever once in a blue moon, twice or three times a year. I treat it like drinking alcohol or whatever. And I believe it simply because there's a great video on YouTube, Dr. Gary Fettke, Fettke. He can explain it better. Is fruit good for you? And but the short version is for 10 million years, we evolved with having very little fructose. I mean, very little fructose. When those little nasty berries that you see on the wild or the crab apples were in season, then the animals would clear the tree, or the early humans would clear the tree. And if you want to risk getting stung by a bee, you get a little bit. But that's once a year, and that's it. There's nothing in nature that is poisonous that has fructose in it. So we are definitely attracted to sweet. But we did not, our bodies ran into hybridized fruit, meaning, back about 40 years ago, that was the green grocer. And now today, it's fruits and veg. And somehow some marketing thing got them together as healthy, right? And what happens is that as you're trying to get off sugar, the body doesn't know the difference between the amount of fructose in a Coca-Cola and an orange juice. Forget about fruit juice. It hits the liver with the same pounding that a Coke will give it. The body cannot process fructose anywhere but the liver. So you end up with fat. We have an epidemic of children with 5-year-old, 6-year-old children with fatty liver disease. It's an alcoholic's disease because there's no other way to process it. And if they're eating a lot of sugar and a lot of fruit and whatever, they're just not going to be able to process it out.
Yeah.
And so that's the main short version of it. I can answer any questions around it, but yes. And what I say is my N1 experiment, let me get you to 90 days powder-free flour and sugar product. You can maybe, I use berries, low glycemic stuff as like a methadone or a Suboxone to help you get through it.
Yep.
But then on the other side, you got to make your own decisions around it. And some people can tolerate a little bit of more fruit than I can, but I just can't tolerate it.
Sure. Yeah. The one term that stuck out to me is when you said in season, right? The fruit that's in season. And that's to me the biggest thing that we've seen, the biggest shift that we've seen over the last several decades is that we've gotten to a point now where we have access to fruit at our grocery store any time of the year, where that's not how it was before. Our ancestors ate certain types of food in season, and we've completely removed that now. And it's just, have fruit whenever you want all year long. And that's obviously not a good thing.
And the fruit is very different too. Look, I mean, those crab apples, that's about, now they've been hybridized so that they're giant fructose bombs. A banana you couldn't even eat it. I mean, there's all just a big seed pod. And look at navel oranges or seedless grapes. I mean, how does this stuff propagate in nature? It doesn't have a seed. And so it's basically a manufactured fructose bomb, and it's very effective. What did they hybridize it for? But the sweetness and the juice, and it's just so. Yeah, I mean, again, it takes time to set this all up, and a lot of people are going to think I'm nuts and crazy, and that's cool. I get a lot of that, but I think when I get somebody off of it all for 90 days and then they try it back, it sets up these cravings, which brings me to the fact that about a third of people biochemically body can't handle fructose or sugar in general. But there's actually a disease called fructose malabsorption or fructose intolerance that people don't even like. It's very hard to diagnose, but it's an actual malady that's in the books, and people, and it models IBS a lot of times, because when you get a lot of fructose in the system, it creates diarrhea or constipation occasionally, but it messes up your bowels because the body can't absorb it, can't process it, didn't get to the liver, so now it's going to be giving you terrible IBS stuff. So yeah, I mean, it's a logical construct. It's easy to see how it all goes together, but it takes some time to get through it.
Hey guys, I want to take a quick second to tell you about Kion, which provides natural supplements and clean coffee for vibrant health. Kion coffee is in the top 3% of all coffee grown worldwide that can claim to be specialty grade, which means it's free from yeast, pesticides, mold, and mycotoxins. It's also one of the best cups of coffee I've ever had. Kion also has a really great aminos product that aids in better sleep, post-exercise recovery, provides fast, clean energy, supports fasting, and improves cognitive performance. Experience the energy and performance benefits of Kion aminos today. To get 15% off your order of Kion coffee or any of their products and supplements, visit getkion.com/danvoss and enter code DANVOSS, that's DANVOSS, at checkout for 15% off your order. Yeah, you mentioned some of these detox, right? The 7-day or 21-day or 30-day detoxes that we see all over social media. Yeah. You've talked about, what's called sugar's revenge. Tell us, what do you mean by sugar's revenge? What is it? And how are these detoxes? They seem to almost lead to our cravings for sugar being even worse after the detox. So how do we go about fixing that?
Yeah, no, good question. What I mean by that is like these, and I keep this little journal of them all. And what I found a 1-day one, which is kind of crazy, but 1-day, 3-day, 5-day, 7-day, 10-day, 15-day, 14-day, 15-day, 21-day, 28-day, and 30-day detoxes. That's how many different sugar detoxes are on the market.
Wow.
And what happens is, it's, what the term white knuckling it means? Means like you're like just grit and bear it.
Just kind of
muscle through it. And so people will get off the sugar, but they pay any mind to the stuff that we've been talking about for the first part of the show here. And they can exercise it off. I think the producers of The Biggest Loser pick athletes who, they can substitute heavy amounts of exercise daily, so their endorphins are high, their dopamine's high, everything's high, and they're not really focused on the sugar manipulating their dopamine and whatever. And so you get to this, like whatever the number is, get to 15 days, you get to 21 days, whatever. And then all of a sudden you're saying, okay, I'm done. And a lot of people binge right then and there on day 22. Right. They're like off to the races and they're right back to normal. And they think that they have done some benefit, and they have. I mean, I'm a big fan of what we call harm reduction. And that 21 days of harm reduction is definitely a good thing. And so, but they like the literature that I've described, the CD study at The Biggest Loser, and a lot of peer-reviewed stuff. 90% of people who lose any amount of weight gain it all back in the first year and add some to it. They get interest, right? And the reason they do it is because they didn't understand what was happening to their brain and emotions in the process. They were focused on, what do I eat and what's my exercise plan? and they just didn't think about, and no one has yet, I mean, until we get this information out further and farther, is that they're not thinking about this emotional immaturity. This is a common construct in the world of alcohol and drug recovery, that if you started using alcohol and drugs at 14 or 15, you stop growing emotionally. Remember that term. You stop growing emotionally.
Wow.
Your life's a mess. Your finances are a mess. Your career's a mess. Your relationships are a mess. Your health is a mess because you were using alcohol and drugs to stop dealing with the day-to-day worries and stresses, or possibly, and this is common, older trauma, right? So you were using it for that too. And so imagine, and look, and I say this all the time, is like, if you talk to someone who's lost 100 or 200 pounds, who's gone through a sugar or a food addiction recovery, a sugar and flour recovery and abstinence, they don't talk about the food. They talk about how they had to grow emotionally, how they had to start handling things differently. And so you can imagine that you started using this stuff when you were a baby or, very young, and your parents did, and you managed your emotions this way for so long that when you get to be an adult, 30, 40, 50, 60 years old, it's hard to change that, turn that battleship. It's hard to change how you're doing it. And you've got to come up with new methods and new ways. So yeah, it's I got a little on the soapbox there, but I apologize.
No, it's super interesting. So what, for the people you're working with, like, what are some of the first steps that you're taking? I know, like, mindset and getting away from that emotional attachment to sugar is a big thing. But if I'm somebody that's coming to you and I'm simply addicted to sugar and it's bad, like, I just have, I love all of my sweets and my ice cream and cookies, and it's just nonstop all day long. What would be some of the first few things that you would do to help me to get over that mindset shift and realize, this is going to take some time. It's going to be one step at a time. It's not something that's going to be fixed overnight. What are some of those, like, baby steps that you like to incorporate right off the start?
Yeah. Well, the detox is important, and I think people they don't give it any respect as a detox from alcohol or whatever. But it's nasty. I mean, in the first 3 to 5 days, 7 days, depending on your habit, and maybe longer for a lot of folks, there's a lot of you're hungry all the time, you're hangry, you're lonely, you're tired, you're lethargic, you're a little bit depressed because now you're not managing this with a substance. And most people, a lot of people, if they don't know what's coming, they don't have time for this. They got kids, they got a job, they got something to do. They can't be like, and people will be, if they quit what we suggest, flour, sugar, and caffeine at the same time, they will be incapacitated in the days 3, 5, 7. And people don't give it that respect. And they also run off and have some kind of they go to the doctor, like they'll get what is commonly known as the keto flu, or they'll start to have flu-like symptoms where their body will start detoxing. Because remember, now it's been detoxing the worst toxin out first, the sugar and the flour. So when you stop doing that, it starts to detox the rest of the stuff, and you start to lose weight, and the toxins get into your system, and you're sniffling and sneezing, and your headaches and the whole thing. And people they don't know consciously. I don't think, I really believe this. I think they know unconsciously that if they just have a little something, all those withdrawal symptoms will stop cold, and they can continue with their day. Now, it's a very short-term fix and a very short-term thinking, but they need to know that this is coming. They need to know the physical ramifications of, I can talk about the emotions till I'm blue in the face, but until I can get you physically off the stuff, abstinent for 30, 60, or 90 days, then we're not accomplishing anything. And while you're doing it, if you don't lay into place the substitutions for the emotional stuff, you're just bound to repeat it. Athletes and people with strong egos and will power can get 15, 20, 30, 60 days, but they're not doing anything. They're not accomplishing anything without understanding the entire picture. But quite realistically, we got to get them through the physical part first, and that's kind of nasty.
Yeah. You mentioned the keto flu. Can you tell us more about what the keto flu is? And is it really just sugar withdrawals?
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is. If you look at the symptoms and line up sugar addiction or sugar withdrawals next to, or sugar detox withdrawals or whatever next to the keto flu, they share like 19 out of 20. I mean, it's exactly the same, and that's what it is. People try and go keto or whatever, and they get off their carbs or ultra processed carbs, and carbs are most of all carbs, and so they just go into sugar withdrawals. That's all. Same thing.
Super interesting. On a nutritional level, like what are some foods that you like to consume and recommend to your clients and the people that you're working with as they're transitioning off sugar? Are there certain, whole foods and any type of specific foods that you like to recommend to kind of help that transition off sugar?
Yeah, that's a fair question. A lot of people want to know what the sugar-free man eats. Like, how do I, what does my diet look like? Right.
Yeah.
And one of the things I like to say is I try not to choose people's diet for them. We have vegetarians that are successful, and keto and carnivore people all have success and all have different needs. But genuinely, as this work moves forward, I am coming to believe that people do need some healthy fats, and that, and this is probably the first podcast I've ever said this on, but I'm beginning to believe that vegetarianism and the need for the calories, which is the fruit and the grains and the legumes and the tofu, which is just soy pasta, that stuff is a bridge to a more healthy diet, which I consider what I call high green keto, which is a lot of greens and to your whatever you like, good healthy fats, fish, chicken, and meat. And I think some vegetarians can do well over time, but my personal story is just that. So it's, an opinion, but it's also a personal story, in that I was 25 years in, no flour, no sugar, no caffeine. And I had bleeding gums my entire life from the time that I first started brushing my teeth. Obviously, I was eating a lot of sugar. And I had adult acne. I had regular acne as a kid, I guess, but adult acne into my 50s. And during this time of flour, sugar, not as bad. The sugar, off the sugar helped it quite a bit from my, 20s and whatever. And my hair was falling out a little bit and whatever. A couple other, I had these, skin things going on, and all of that stuff cleared just like that when I got off the fruit and the grains. I mean, literally stopped. The inflammation of what was causing acne, the inflammation of what was causing bleeding gums, all of that stuff went away almost instantaneously in 30 days. Wow. And so that's just, and I think that you can go quite a while that way, but I think at the end of the day, I think a human, my people say, Mike, are you a doctor? I say, no. But if I was a doctor, I would want to be a doctor of food anthropology. I'm totally fascinated by, my first book was Sugar Blues, which talked about this, England going to Africa, picking up the slaves, and going to the Americas and the Caribbean, picking up the sugar and growing a great big empire. And then I started to take it even back further than that, and then even further than that, into this kind of evolutionary, how it all happened. Like I always believe that we can't get ourselves out of this mess, the obesity crisis and this metabolic syndrome crisis, until we figure out how we got into it. And so I really like that. I mean, I like that study. And so I just believe that I think it's ridiculous to believe that we didn't eat a lot of greens as we came through being apes and early man. And then the delineation of how the brain grew is people believe that they started eating a lot of tubers and a lot of starch, and that they grew it through the glucose in the brain. And then the other faction, if you will, the other camp, believes that we started to get meat and that kind of stuff. But I believe that and I think this is true. If you're metabolically healthy, you can balance both. And like you can eat some grain, you can eat a lot of greens, and you can eat a lot of meats and fruits, or not fruits, meats and seafoods and what have you. And we did come out of the ocean, I mean, we did come out of the ooze. And so that the ocean connection, the seafood connection is good. And so it's a hard thing. It's an interesting giant puzzle. And now we have all the wars, the vegetarians and the vegans against the carnivores and the paleos.
Yep.
And I just think it's bullshit. I mean, excuse me, I don't know if I can say that, but I think it's crap, because I think we were supposed to be able to go back. And I'm wearing a glucose monitor now. And I suggest people wear a glucose monitor to test their own body, because we can't see inside our body. We can't, we don't know for 20 years or 30, 40, what diabetes is going to manifest. But when you can see your blood glucose, your levels every day right on your phone from the CGM, then you can adjust your own self. And mine says I'm pretty darn healthy from what I eat and what I've been eating. Never go above 100 very often, never go below 70. It's just 80s and 90s right across the board. And now I'm using this in my program, because like people say, what do I eat? What do I eat? And I'll say, I don't know. Look at your phone. What does it say? So yeah.
It's fascinating technology. I've had a few podcast discussions in the last month around continuous glucose monitoring and the advancements that it's brought to our health over the last few decades. It's something I'm learning a lot more about as of recent, and something I'll be incorporating into my lifestyle. But the technology that we have access to is pretty fascinating.
Yeah, no, and one of the things that's really exciting, and my quote is, the world changes with non-invasive CGMs. Apple's working on it. There's already one just got approved by the FDA. There's already one in Europe where it's just a little light pulse through your watch or your Fitbit or whatever. And, this requires a little stick. It's not actually a pin in you, but it's a little filament in you, which is fine. It doesn't hurt or anything. It's just like wearing a Band-Aid.
Right.
But when you can see that, that's when the world changes, because now one donut won't kill you. Well, let's see what it says.
Yeah.
And how long your blood sugar is elevated from the donut.
That's interesting. There's one area that I think people struggle with when it comes to, getting off of sugar, is being in social settings, especially around the holidays. They're going to Christmas parties or even any other time of the year. If you're in a social event or social gathering, you might have mom bringing out a tray of cookies, or like you said, somebody encouraging you to have a donut. What is one kind of rule or one thing that we should keep in mind when we're at social events to have that, that ability to say no to sugar?
Yeah, that's next to the physical part and the emotional part. The social part is really one of the hardest, because it's so enculturated and so deep into every celebration from birth to death. And now everything, because 85% of the food products on the shelf have sugar in it. So it's really hard. And I'm not, the answer to the question is a new tribe, a different tribe. One of the things we find in our work is that, people are tribe animals. They love to be together and do stuff together with their family and their friends and whatever. And we do stuff together. And that's just the way we were, raised over millions of years. And it's part of, health and wellness. I mean, and when people are isolated and they're the only one in their group, it becomes hard. It's really difficult. So the folks that we have that that succeed are a little bit pioneer in spirit, and they are willing to join another crowd. They're willing to. They're usually the first person in their family went to college, or the best mechanic in their city, or they're the best lawyer, or the best athlete. Not best, never, but they've had a success in their life where they had to leave their family of origin or their friend group of origin and join another group of people who were doing something that they wanted to do and something different. And the founder of the Food Addiction Institute has a great quote. He says, "This takes an inordinate amount of support." It's almost like the founding of AA 60 years ago, where it wasn't really, you had to be anonymous because you could be in trouble if you were, a known alcoholic. But it was the ability, the community, the build out of the community of people where you could go and say, "Man, this is crazy. I can't stop drinking," or whatever you said, because, and someone understood it because your wife didn't understand it because she just said, "Stop," and you couldn't just stop. Same with sugar. People say, just stop. Why are you eating so much? Your health's in trouble. Your weight's bad, blah, blah, blah. And, you say to yourself every morning, "I can't," but they're angry at you. It's stigmatized. Even your family. This just happens all the time. People in their own family are the only person trying to quit sugar. And without a separate tribe, without a separate support group, it just is hard. It's doubly hard, if it's even possible, because, I don't know that it's even possible. I just haven't seen a lot of people succeed trying to do it solo.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it almost seems like it would be very near impossible to achieve it without a group that you can rely on that are like-minded, that have similar goals. And it just doubles down on that theory or that idea that, we are the product of the 5 people that we hang out with the most. If you're hanging out with people that drink on weekends, you're likely going to end up drinking on the weekend. If you're hanging out with people that, run a few days a week, you're likely going to be running more because you're with them. So that kind of just doubles down on that concept.
I love that quote. Quote.
Yeah, it's good. I want to touch a little bit more on, the story of you raising your children, with at least reduced sugar, maybe not completely off sugar, but tell us a little bit more about that story of, how you were able to at least reduce the sugar that your children were consuming. And for anyone that's listening, maybe they're a parent that's interested in that idea a little bit further. What would you like to share with that?
Yeah, it was, again, I'm not exactly sure how I talked my wife at the time into doing this, but I talked her into having children. They ended up being twins. I thought it was one, but it was two. And from the womb, from the time she got pregnant till they were 6 years old, they never had flour, sugar, or caffeine. And it was just incredible, to be honest with you. It was an amazing, I with all my heart believe that their brain developed better. That first 1,000 days, that from conception to the 2 years old, the brain is just exploding with growth, and I just think it got wired differently. It wasn't attracted to this stuff. And we fought the schools, the Montessori schools, the grandparents, the friends' parents. Everybody thought we were depriving them of something, like a childhood, like they needed it, like something was mandatory, like they had to have. And they reward the kids in school. They reward the kids after soccer practice with all this sugar. And we just no. And so we ended up caving one day at a birthday party at a roller skating rink, and they let them have the cake and ice cream, but never in the house when they were growing up. And I divide parents who are interested into separate groups. Like, kids don't go shopping before they're 7 or 8, right. And forget about, they don't even go to school before they're 4, and you are 110% responsible for what you put in their body. This idea that we have an obesity crisis of children between 4 and 6 is just insanity. I mean, I've only said it 2 or 3 times, but this is child abuse. This is, you're aware of this problem. You may have it yourself, and you're still giving this product to the children. And so But kids who have already had it, that's another battle, and we've had a lot of success with some of our coaches and different folks who, when you start to talk to the kids as an adult, and you start to, and the most important part is what the airlines say: put your own oxygen mask on first. Without that, there's no healing in the family. There's no change. Because the kids are smart. They know what's going on. They're not, if you're 9 or 10, your mom's got a stash. We always knew my mom had a stash and where it was. So, you're not going to get away with that. So you got to go first, and you got to lead by example if it's important to you. Yeah. But it's pretty much my goal in life to, what Facebook group we had that's Sugar-Free Kids. It's the fastest growing thing we ever did. And I don't even have a website up yet. I just threw it up there, and then all of a sudden, all these people had said, I like this idea.
Wow.
And so it's going to happen. It's just how long, one of my mentors says we're 8, I don't know where he gets this number, but 8 years into a 30-year tectonic shift of education and awareness, of sugar and what it's doing and the whole thing, and change around sugar, the way it's taxed, the way it's handled as a drug of abuse or whatever. So
that's interesting. So he thinks we're kind of in the middle or the beginning part of that transition to more awareness and maybe a culture shift, maybe a mindset shift, more general awareness to the public.
Yeah, 50 years from now, they're going to say, like they said about cocaine and Coca-Cola, they're going to say, hey, did you know they used to give sugar to kids when they back about 50? I mean, it's going to be an adult treat. I don't think it'll ever be illegal. And I think there'll be like cigarettes. No one knows what the tipping point is. People don't realize that prior to the tobacco litigation, at certain times, upwards of over 50% of the United States adult population smoked cigarettes. Mm-hmm. And then after the litigation, which lasted for years, with the states against the big tobacco, it's now below 14%. And so the awareness of the science being in the news every day, like $1 trillion advertising campaign, because newscasters kept blasting it everywhere, everybody got wise and they started, quitting the cigarettes. And I think that's going to happen here. I don't know if it'll be litigation. I don't know if you know this, but J-Lo and A-Rod, went on a 10-day sugar detox last year sometime or something, and the internet exploded about it.
No.
And and just recently, Rebel Wilson, the Australian actress, same thing. She actually checked herself in for sugar addiction.
Wow.
And lost 60 or 80 pounds. And so when the influencers, and I don't know if it's going to be litigation. I don't know what the tipping point is. My fear is that I won't be ready, or we won't be ready for the people who are finally becoming aware of all the stuff that we've discussed on this podcast.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's super interesting. I mean, it kind of comes full circle to how we started our conversation around it being the gateway drug, and how important it is for us to establish the right habits for our kids right when they're born, or even before they're born, when they're still in the womb, because those are transformative years, and the habits that they're picking up on in those early years is what they take through life with them, into adulthood, and that's hard to reverse, as you know, but it certainly can be done. It's not impossible.
Right. Yeah, no, it's definitely possible. It is harder, though. I got to admit, it's not you got to be committed to it. And I think what happens is if people get committed, our success stories with children are people who have already done it themselves, because they've seen the positive results in their life. And so they may have struggled many years with it, and they don't want to pass that on to their kids.
Super interesting. Before I get to my last question for you, Mike, where can people find out more about you? I know you have your website. You have your book. Are you on social? Where would you like to send people to
Yeah,
learn
I'm
more
at
about
Sugar Free Man on all the socials, and Facebook. There's a sugar addiction group. It's pretty big. And then if you just put sugar addiction in Facebook, you'll see it. And then sugaraddiction.com. And
great.
soon going to be opening sugardetox.com. You know, this thing will probably have some longevity. So yeah, we're at the major. If you just go there, there's a big yellow picture of a book, my book. You just click on it. You can download the book for free. There's a quiz there you can take and see if you might have a trouble. I always tell people though, just go to the book because you don't really need, if you made your way to sugaraddiction.com, you don't need to take the quiz. You're all set. You just take the book and you'll be fine.
There you go. That's super helpful. That's great. Thank you for sharing that with my audience. My last question for you, Mike, is who do you want to impact the most with the work that you're doing?
That's pretty easy. As I live by that motto myself, who do you want to be a hero to? And I want to be a hero to the next generation of kids that are, trying to, because kids can be mean, man. I mean, they're not doing it on purpose, but when some child is overweight, when I was a kid, there weren't very few, almost like one in a huge high school.
Yeah.
There weren't any. Now a third of kids are overweight and, they get teased and, it sounds just like a little fun play and tease. But when I hear the stories of people who were teased because they were overweight when they were younger, it has a pretty strong psychological effect. And so my goal is to, get the information out to childbearing women and so that the kids in the next generation don't have to suffer through this, both physically and mentally.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, it's something I don't know if it's talked about enough or even thought about is that cascading psychological effect that is put onto these kids that, it starts off with lifestyle choices around nutrition and sugar that leads to diabetes and obesity that can lead to, bullying and getting picked on as a kid. And we all know the effects that can have on people for sometimes, unfortunately, for the rest of their lives. Yeah. So I think what you're doing and trying to impact the younger population and get this thing right, early on in life is a really great mission and goal of yours. So thank you.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Yeah. We're excited about what's happening. Somehow people are now catching on. I think the science. We do the Quit Sugar Summit every year. If you want to go there and leave your email, it's coming up in September. It's September and January every year. But that's where the science is. That's all, that's where all the science is. A lot of the best educators in the world are there trying to do the same thing, get the message out.
Yeah, that's great. I will be sure to check that out. All right, Michael, that's all I got. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time and I hope you have a great day.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Take care.